Alright, so last week's came off as a little more harsh than I wanted it to. But you have to understand, Fallout holds a special place in my heart, right? I've been playing these games since the 90s, like 99. And Fallout 3, my late mother got me when it first came out for Christmas that year. So it holds a special place in my heart, as it always have. And I'm more disappointed than anything to see the way it's going for the show, and most likely the next game. But I'm going to try to limit myself to the show, okay? And how it could have been done to a point to where I would have been happy with it, many fans would have been happy with it, and done in such a way that would have gotten new people, normies, right? Average, everyday folk, watching it and enjoying it, okay? Because post-apocalyptic shows have been around forever, and people like them. Same with science fiction shows, right? Two shows, one that was about like super sophisticated technology and whatnot, called Eureka, ran on Sci-Fi for a long time, and a post-apocalyptic show that ran before The Walking Dead that had quite a few of the same cast as The Walking Dead. It was called Jericho. That was a great show too, right? So people like these types of shows, and people like this aesthetic. People like post-apocalyptic. People like retro-futuristic. So I think the best introduction to Fallout that an average, everyday person could have had would have been a story that introduced it in the pre-war, where we get like a good hour-long, hour 20 minutes episode, pre-war life, right? How the war and stuff is going, stuff like that. Then transition over into the bombs falling, then directly after, introduce some mutations and whatnot, so we can experience it with the people experiencing it, so that it doesn't feel forced, like we should already know this information, right? That's how you hook people in and get them invested in the environment, the story, and the setting, right? That's why people fucking love Mad Max, yeah? Because people know the story of Mad Max, all the way from the first one to... I can't remember if the game is set after the newest Mad Max movie or before. Anyway, I've said this multiple times in a few comments on the video, the last video there, of what would be a great story that's already in lore, that's already been established, that's pretty much completely fleshed out, but still has enough room to work with. And that is the story of Randall Dean Clark. Now, this man is my favorite character in any Fallout game, okay? Simply because of his story, the way it works, the way we're introduced to it, the way we find it, the items left behind, and partly because I share the same birthday as the guy, right? Randall Dean Clark was born on the 5th of February, 2053. So, after the Resource War had already started. I do believe the Resource War started in 2050 or 2049. So it's in full swing by the time he's born. And the world has been at war for well over 20 years by the time he's an adult. Okay, he has known nothing but war his entire life. The war has always been going on in the background for as long as he has been alive, right? So, show this man and his family. He has a wife and he has a child. Show it pre-war. Maybe he's working a factory job or something. What I mean by pre-war, since I should explain that. There's two different wars in Fallout. There's the Resource War. Well, there's multiple wars, actually. There's the Resource War, which led up to the Sino-American War, which is when China invaded Alaska. And then there's the Great War, which is when the nuclear weapons were used, okay? So the Resource War is the one I'm talking about right now. So that's all going on in the background. Maybe Randall Dean Clark enlisted straight out of high school, went through basic training, and was fighting for the Americans during the Resource War. Maybe he enlisted later on. But any which way, he still enlisted beforehand. Now, he liked to hike and be out in nature and do survival stuff. But he also had a family and would return home to them. It's one of these times when he's returning home, right? So, just to reiterate here, show him living life with his family, going off to war, get some action shots, fighting the war and whatnot. You know, that's a full fucking episode right there. Then, you know, decompressing after returning home for a while. You know, go out into the woods, be alone, decompress before you actually return home to your wife and kid. But while he's returning home, you end the episode with the bombs falling, right? That is how it goes in his journals. That is how it could go right there. Full episode, perfect cliffhanger ending right there. Then you start off the next episode with the start of the journal there, talking about how the nuke let off an EMP that destroyed his truck. You know, the old couple that was in the vehicle next to him weren't so lucky. They saw the flash directly. It burned out their eyes. So they're both blind. Him knowing what happened, because he was in the military, helps them out of their vehicle, make sure they can hold each other one last time, and then puts one bullet through both their heads before moving on down the highway toward home, right? If you need some action and whatnot, maybe a prison bus, you know, gets overturned and the prisoners get out, get their hands on the police officers' weapons, you know, have a little bit of a shootout on the bridge or something. Maybe a bridge is half collapsed and he has to move through the tunnels inside the bridge, since those seem to be a thing on Fallout bridges and overpasses for some reason. That way you can get some claustrophobic, you know, gritty hand-to-hand style fighting and shit in if you need to. Right, you end that episode with him getting home and realizing the entire area has just been leveled by the shockwave. Start the next episode skipping a few weeks, days, weeks, whatever it is that's in his journal, before he finds the bodies of his family. In his journals, I'm fairly sure he doesn't find their bodies, but man like him, especially to prove a point on how determined he is, we could say that he doesn't give up until he finds his family's bodies. He buries them and then he starts moving on down the road, right? He knows he needs to get away from populated areas because shit's gonna get bad. By the time he's moving toward, you know, Zion, we can have him skirt around a small town where martial law is in effect and maybe they already got some thieves hung or something. He could come across a few more raiders doing terrible shit, you know, just to prove how fucked the world got in just a few weeks, right? Then when he finally makes it to Zion, you know, you can have it pan over the canyon and whatnot as the sun rises or sets. Maybe the sun's rising and off in the distance you can see the black clouds of Fallout rolling in. Makes it to a cave system before the black rain comes down. Then you can end an episode there, right? And then just go by his terminals at that point, because that's pretty much what each of his terminals could be, is an episode. Figure you could get 12, maybe 24 episodes if you really want to push it, out of just Randall Dean Clark's story. It's already written. You could flesh it out however you want, really. Just keep the fucking quirky millennial bullshit writing to yourself at this point, because it's more grating than endearing at this point. And then there you go, right? You know, we get the dark grittiness of Fallout, right? Because that's what people are going to gravitate toward. Sad to say, but it's what had to be done with comic book movies. You couldn't just jump into the mystical fantasy whatever. I mean, you could back in the 70s, 80s have like the Incredible Hulk and Captain America and whatnot. Those shows didn't run too long. I think the longest running out of those was Wonder Woman. That's because she was a good-looking woman on the screen, so, you know, that helped quite a bit. But it wasn't until Marvel really started humanizing and making it more believable and relatable that the superhero genre really took off the way it did. And then after they had already done that, then they started bringing in more of the weird stuff that, let's face it, back when they first started making these, they wouldn't have got away with, right? No one would have wanted to watch that, right? A giant purple guy with magic rocks wiping out half the universe. Come on now. A dude making a set of armor that has flamethrowers and shit on it. Sure, why not, right? So, after the first season where you introduce the world, you introduce characters, you show them how gritty and realistic it can be. When the Black Rain comes, the first mutations come, and you can show us learning about, like, the Brahmin, or the Yaogwai, or the Bighorners, or the Geckos, or the Radroaches, and stuff like that, as he learns about them, right? Then once we have all of this information, once we've learned all this, but we also can learn about the vaults from him. Because he meets people from a vault. I do believe his second wife was a vault dweller, right? You can learn about Vault-Tec, about the vaults and all that, okay? You just get a little taste of the weirdness going on there. But run through his entire story, it would be great. And just end it where you actually end it. Don't try to cliffhanger it into fucking 10 more seasons, right? End shows that need ending. In this season, which you could just call Fallout the Survivalist, would end with him dying the same way he does in the games and stuff. Say games, in the game, where you find his body, right? You end on a hopeful note for Zion, right? You give the viewer back bittersweet hope, right? Now, I fully understand, trying to make a long-form series out of it to keep people coming back and make money off of it, but once you have the world established, once people know what a Radroach is, or a fire ant is, or a vault dweller is, and once they know what actually happened leading up to this point, then you can start introducing some of the weird shit. For instance, the second season, since each season could be its own independent thing, try out different directors and different stories and whatnot, like an anthology there, right? Just call it Fallout the Vault, right? This would introduce us to Vault-Tec, right? The Vault-Tec, the experiments, how shady they are, the weird shit they get up to. First episode could just be an average, everyday dude, right? Living his life. Maybe he lives in an apartment, right? Working a 9 to 5, heads home one day, and Vault-Tec stops him and say, "Hey, you live here, right? Well, we would like to speak to you about signing you up for a vault. Let's sit down and get your information." So Vault-Tec sits down with him, gets all of his information, realizes he's a single guy with no family or anything like that. Perfect for what they need. They say, "All right, well, since you seem to be qualified for what we're looking for, we would like to make you the overseer of a vault. In fact, we want to go so far as to give you a house to live in next to the vault, so if anything happens, you can run right in." This man would love it. He'd be amazed by it, right? They get him all moved into his nice little fucking Lustron home there. And then the bombs fall, right? So the man runs off into the vault, sticks his punch card into the terminal, activates the Overseer protocol, in which case when he does that, the vault door simply screeches to life and seals him in. That's when you see a big-ass 77 on the door. That's where you end the first episode, right? Now, people that know Fallout and the comics and the lore and whatnot, we know what Vault 77 did, right? For people that didn't know, well, they're gonna fucking learn, right? So he goes in, nice little field, nice little house. Maybe it's all like Blast from the Past style, where it's a nice little house built underground there for him to live in or something, right? But then, no one else. He's completely fucking isolated. And we keep him isolated for a month, maybe 2 months, just by himself, right? Some entertainment here and there, like primetime shows and stuff, reruns, plays at nighttime for him or something. But he has his list of jobs to do. We need to make sure he starts going stir crazy, though. And once he starts going stir crazy, he gets gassed. Vault-Tec comes in, leaves a box of puppets, right? Wakes up the next day to a box of puppets. Doesn't really think anything of it. You know, but then over time, starts going all castaway with it, realizes he needs to keep his sanity. Starts talking to the puppets. And then we start cutting to his point of view, seeing what he sees, and the puppets go from being puppets to being people. You know, it could be all bright, chipper, colorful. You know, the king could be the king, the dog could be the dog. You know, like a person in a dog suit, like a guy dressed up as a king and whatnot. Fine, make it whimsical, make it crazy, make it out there, right? And then every once in a while, just cut back to reality. Him standing there, dirty, nasty, scraggly beard and whatnot, long-ass fingernails, just talking to puppets, right? I think that'd be fine. You know, we keep this man in this vault for an extended amount of time. I'd say keep him in until Reclamation Day is supposed to happen. So 20-some years, whatever. Keep him in there that long. Make sure he's thoroughly fucking insane by the time those doors open. And when the doors open, he doesn't want to leave, right? He's too set in his way of sitting with his family every night, watching TV. Maybe we cut back to reality, show him sitting in his, like, dirty-ass underwear and whatnot, eating beans out of a can with the puppets laying next to him. And instead of something actually playing on the screen, maybe it's like some brainwashing shit going on, right? Then, you know, since Vault-Tec wants him to fuck out of the vault at this point, the doors are open, then you introduce the Vault Boy puppet. Now, he could just be completely fucking gone at this point. In which case, the puppet starts doing its thing in his head. Maybe you start introducing like more of a horror theme to it, right? Like that one Fallout mod that had the weird like wooden vault boy that would just follow you around. Maybe something like that actually gets him out of the vault, you know. And yes, I know in the comics the king puppet ends up dead and he ends up leaving because he thinks he's gonna get in trouble. And keep the story, whatever. Vault-Tec needs him out of the vault because they need to see what he does when he's out in the wasteland now. Goes out into the wasteland, same thing, you know, giant-ass rad scorpions big enough to pick up cars, him getting accosted by fucking slavers and whatnot, and then just losing it. You know, show Vault Boy saving his life, and then cut back to him brutally bashing some dude in the head with a fucking a cinder block while the Vault Boy puppet is just tucked into his, like, I don't know, underwear or something, man. Make the dude completely batshit insane, but make it so that when we see the world through his eyes, it's the wild wasteland, right? So the first season, you got the dirty, gritty, dark. The second season, you get introduced to Vault-Tec, wild wasteland type, wacky, zany shit. And then the third season could be, I don't know, maybe a mixture thereof. Like, pretty sure the Brotherhood of Steel, when it was founded, ran into some weird shit. Could also start introducing body horror shit. There with Mariposa, Roger Maxon, and the Forced Evolutionary Virus, right? That way we can get introduced to West-Tec and what this shit does to people. An entire season dedicated to the Brotherhood of Steel's founding. And then maybe after that, it's Harold and the Master, right? Back when he was, what was his real name? Richard Gray, I think? Yeah, he was one of the people that make up the original Master. Well, Richard Monroe, I think his real name is. Born in Vault 8, lived in the hub. Yeah, he would have been pre-war. Same with Harold. Harold was a kid when he went into his vault before it became twin mothers and whatnot. But yeah, you know, them meeting, working together, you know, a little bit of pre-war. You don't need to dip back into the pre-war times every season, but a little bit of pre-war when they were kids. And then, you know, establishment in the post-apocalyptic world in the hub as traders. And then, well, super mutants are attacking caravans. We should probably figure this out. The whole run into Mariposa and whatnot. And then, you know, Richard Gray getting knocked into the vat of FEV. Harold gets splashed with it, and a seed lands on his head. He wakes up later on, out in the desert where people saved him and drug him back to town. Richard Gray blorps himself out of the fucking FEV and starts assimilating everything he fucking comes in contact with. And then the season can follow these two on their diverging paths of body horror, right? That's another thing Fallout is well known for. The ghouls, the super mutants, the centaurs, the floaters, the master. Yeah. Right? Like the centaurs. In the 3D games and whatnot, it's like the upper torso of a human with a human head, tentacles coming out of the mouth, and then 4 arms that act as legs to like another torso attached to it. That's horrific, right? That's horrific and fucked up and weird. It's amazing. The original Fallout games, one side of it was a torso of a person, and the other side of it was a torso of an animal, or Brahmin, or dog, or something. And then human arms, there were 6 of them, and then some tentacles and whatnot. Then, of course, there's floaters and all that happy good shit, and then all sorts of other weird abominations and mutants that run around. FEV abominations, you name it. There's all sorts of weird-ass mutants that are just completely fucking horrific that run around in the wasteland that we could get introduced to this way, right? And then by that point in time, you're like 4 seasons in. The people who have watched up until this point will know when the war happened, how the war happened, know the world pre-war, know about mutants, know about the Vaults, know about West-Tec and the FEV. You could do damn near anything at that point in time. Once all of this is established through a slow drip feeding of this information to people, you could do wonders with it at that point. They could have done so much with this show, but instead it's the same style of fucking wannabe quirky bullshit, and it's not working for me, is the thing. Is it gonna work for normal people? Sure, it's gonna work for normal people. Because normal people have no idea about the source material. And a lot of people are going to say, again, nitpicking, whatnot. Not really, man. People are still pissed off at fucking Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies because the Balrog had fucking wings, right? I don't even know, man. I don't even know. Don't even get me fucking started on the goddamn Rings of Power. I watched that show because my sister wanted to watch it. Yeah, no, that is... yeah. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough today about Fallout, the show, and how they could have made it better. So, thanks for watching, if indeed you still are. Let me see here. Don't want to mispronounce the man's handle again, so I would like to thank Eric Hewitt, Bago, and the Aussie Moose for being members. If you would like to become a member too, link is in the description below. Yeah, should be in the description. $2 a month. Get members only stuff. Today is the 30th when I'm recording this, so Tuesday of the week before this goes out. I need to do a members only video. I think I'll grab one of my old scripts and make something of it. And then a members only run, which I will probably do later on tonight. If you're watching this video, not tonight, a week ago tonight. It's weird. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to, trudge through the next episode of the Fallout show. I've only watched the first one so far. First episode of the 2nd season. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'll make it like a watch night thing on the Discord or something. I'll figure something out.